This is a spear. It's a sharpened stick. That is the entire technology. And this is what they pointed it at. A straight-tusked elephant. 13 tons. Over 4 meters at the shoulder. Roughly twice the weight of a woolly mammoth. Neanderthals hunted these on purpose. Not once. Repeatedly. In the same place. For about 2,000 years. So let's talk about how that went. First, the target. This is Palaeoloxodon antiquus, and it lived across Europe during the last warm period, about 125,000 years ago. It is the largest land animal in Europe. It has straight tusks, which is where it gets the extremely creative name. As you can see, it's slow, enormous, and completely defenseless. I'm joking. It could kill everything on this continent, and it knew it. For scale, a big modern African elephant weighs around 6 tons, so this thing is roughly 2 of those. No natural predator would look at it twice, and then we showed up. This is a Neanderthal, shorter than you, considerably stronger than you, brain slightly larger than yours, and, this is important, completely out of options. Here's the complete equipment list. A wooden spear, some sharp rocks, fire, that's it, that's the loadout. Although in fairness, the spear wasn't crude. At a site called Schöningen, also in Germany, archaeologists found wooden throwing spears, carefully shaped, weighted toward the front like a modern javelin, made an extremely long time before any of this. So yes, it's a stick, but it's an engineered stick. There's a difference, and that difference is the entire reason we're not still in the trees. Now, most animals would look at that inventory and hunt something reasonable. A deer, a horse, something that fits inside the frame. But there is one enormous advantage to hunting the largest animal in Europe, and it's this: more meat. That's the whole strategy. I'll be honest, it's hard to argue with. Now, you might reasonably ask how we know any of this happened, rather than a group of Neanderthals simply finding a dead elephant and getting lucky. 2 things. The first is a place called Neumark-Nord in Germany. Archaeologists there found the remains of 70 straight-tusked elephants, covered in cut marks. The specific kind you get from stone tools, stripping a carcass, methodically, by people who had clearly done this before. Not one elephant. Not one lucky week, 70 of them, across roughly 2,000 years in the same location. And the animals skew heavily toward big adult males, which is the detail that gives it away. Adult males travel alone, away from the protection of the herd. That's not what you find if people are scavenging whatever happens to die. That's a target being chosen. Which brings us to the second thing, and it's my favorite object in all of prehistory. At a site called Lehringen, they found a spear made of yew wood, about 2.5 meters long. It was lying between the ribs of a straight-tusked elephant. Somebody put a stick inside an elephant, and it worked, and we found the receipt. So how do you actually do it? You may have noticed the problem. To use a thrusting spear on an animal, you have to be standing next to the animal, and the animal in question is 13 tons. There's no version of this where you're at a safe distance. The plan requires you to walk up to the largest animal in Europe and stay there for a while. The leading theory is that they didn't fight it fairly, which is the only good news in this entire video. They likely separated a single animal from the group and drove it somewhere it couldn't move properly. Soft lake mud, a steep bank, water. An elephant stuck in mud is still an elephant, but it's an elephant that can only rotate. Then, and I want to stress that this is the actual step, you hour it and stab it repeatedly until it stops. Thankfully, this took a very long time. For the elephant, obviously. It was fine for everyone else. Now, at this point, if you've watched any other video about Neanderthals, you've probably heard a particular claim, that their skeletons show the same pattern of injuries as rodeo riders, head and neck, over and over, because they hunted enormous animals at close range and kept getting thrown. It's a fantastic line. It's in 100 videos. I nearly put it in this one. It's also been quietly walked back. The original study was published in 1995. Later work found that the modern humans living alongside Neanderthals had a very similar injury pattern. One follow-up study compared the fractures to the kind of thing you'd get from water tubing or falling over a table. And after 17 years, the researcher who proposed it said the idea should be qualified and possibly simply retracted. So I'm not going to tell you their bones prove they wrestled elephants. What I'll tell you instead is what we actually found, which is better. Because here's the part nobody thinks about. The hunt is the easy part. You now have 13 tons of animal lying in a swamp, and it is not food yet. It's a construction problem. Elephant hide can be a couple of centimeters thick. Under that is fat. Under that is muscle in units larger than a person. And your tool for all of this is a flake of stone about the length of your thumb. Getting through it takes days, multiple people working in shifts, resharpening constantly, while the entire thing slowly goes off in the sun and every scavenger in the region works out what has happened. And at Neumark-Nord, you can see the order they did it in. The cut marks are systematic. Skin, then fat, then muscle, then organs. Not frantic, not opportunistic. This is a procedure, and they knew it before they started. Now let's talk about what this costs, because I think we've been too positive. If you spawn in as a Neanderthal on Elephant Day, your job is to stand within trunk range of 13 tons of frightened animal and hold a stick. Your health is whatever a human has, and your healthcare plan is a friend who is also holding a stick. There is no dodge button. There is no second attempt. If it swings, that's the run. And if you're sitting there thinking you'd have been useful on this trip, I'd like you to be honest with yourself. You struggled to open a jar this month, and then you told someone about it. So the obvious question is why? Why would anyone do this on purpose, twice, let alone for 2,000 years? And this is where it gets genuinely strange. Let's introduce the only reliable metric in prehistoric archaeology, the calories to death ratio. I invented it. It's not real, and we're going to use it for the rest of the video. One adult straight-tusked elephant is worth more than 2,500 daily food portions, 4,000 calories each. Put another way, a group of 25 people could eat a single elephant for 3 months. So the ratio is outstanding, assuming you survive, which, and I cannot stress this enough, is the assumption doing all the work. But this is where the actual problem starts. And it's not the hunting. You've killed it. Congratulations. You are now standing next to 3 months of food in direct sunlight. Meat spoils quickly. And the standard picture of a Neanderthal group is about 20 to 25 people. That's the number researchers generally worked with. Small bands, moving constantly, eating what they caught. 25 people. 3 months of food, going off by the hour. They cannot eat it in time. It's not close. So one of two things has to be true, and both of them are a problem for the standard picture. Option A. The group wasn't 25 people. It was far larger, big enough to actually get through an elephant, which means Neanderthals were gathering in crowds and could organize, coordinate, and feed them. Option B. They preserved it. Drying, smoking, storing, planning for food they would eat weeks later, which means they weren't living hand to mouth at all. They were running a supply chain. And in 2025, researchers working that same site found something that makes option B look very likely. They found a place where Neanderthals had taken bones, thousands of fragments, from at least 170 animals, smashed them open, and boiled them. Not for marrow. Marrow you can simply eat. This was for the grease inside the spongy bone, which only comes out if you crush it and heat it in water for hours. It is, as far as we know, the oldest fat processing site on Earth. 125,000 years old. And fat is the thing that actually keeps you alive. Lean meat on its own won't do it. Eat enough protein without fat and you will starve with a full stomach. There's a name for it. So they weren't just hunting, they were running a facility. Somewhere in the region of 125,000 years ago, people were boiling bones at an industrial scale to extract a nutrient they understood they needed, which is a very strange thing to find at a site where we assumed everyone was wandering about in groups of 20. And it wasn't only elephants either. The same landscape has butchered remains of Merck's rhinoceros, aurochs, which are wild cattle roughly twice the size of a modern cow, deer, horses, and the occasional cave lion, which I would like to point out is an animal that hunts you back. So the elephant wasn't a bizarre one-off. It was simply the largest item on a menu that was already extremely ambitious. And there's one more thing about this place, which I think is the strangest detail of all. The area around that lake appears to have been kept open, less dense forest than the land surrounding it, over roughly the same 2,000 years that people were using the site. The likely explanation is fire. Deliberate, repeated burning to hold a landscape in the shape they wanted it. Think about what that means. It's not just that they hunted there, they were maintaining the place, managing it across a span of time longer than all of recorded history so that it kept producing what they needed. That's not a band of survivors passing through. That's a species with a plan for next year. Either way, the conclusion is obvious. They were smart, capable, socially complex people who planned ahead, coordinated in large numbers, and processed food with real technique. The cartoon idea of the stupid caveman has been wrong for quite a while now, which is a shame because it was a much easier video. They kept doing this for around 2,000 years at the same lake, generation after generation, teaching it to children, a tradition of walking up to the largest animal in Europe with a sharpened stick. And then the climate shifted, the forests changed, and the straight-tusked elephant went extinct, which, I want to be clear, is the one part of this story we probably can't blame entirely on them. Probably. So next time you're standing in a supermarket deciding what to have for dinner, remember, someone once solved that problem by walking into a swamp and stabbing a 13-ton animal with a stick, then boiling its bones for 3 days so the children would make it through winter. And their calories to death ratio was still better than most startups. Thanks for watching.